Hello, welcome to the ACR webinar, Setting Up and Using eDocs within ACR. Today's webinar, we're going to cover the following topics. What is an eDoc template and what can they be used for? How do I configure ACR to use eDocs? What is a merge field? And how do I configure customers and suppliers to use them? Within ACR, there is an often overlooked tool for communicating with your customers and suppliers. This tool is the eDoc system. eDocs refers to the templates that are used to create documents that are printed or emailed out. On screen, you can see a list of the available documents. It's not all of them, just some of the more common ones. They're roughly split into two categories, either customer related or supplier related, with some exceptions that cross over and some additional documents that are for other specific areas like payroll. We can see the customer side that there are predominantly sales documents such as the tax invoices, quotes, the debtor statements, both bulk billing and open items / brought forward style. We can see on the supplier side that we've got predominantly ordering documents or remittance and payment advices. Some of the crossover documents are the more common one. Some of the more common ones are the bulk email, which allows you to send updates and information out to your customers or your suppliers, and the recipient created tax invoice. When looking at blank eDoc document templates, it's important to understand that the layout itself is generally set. If you wish to have different columns displaying, you'll need to look at alternative versions of the template. What can be changed, though, are the areas that are highlighted in light blue, such as the top part here where it says Demo Company and the area at the bottom that says Area Available. And those areas are going to differ depending on which specific template you're looking at. This is just one example of a wholesale tax invoice template, but each template will have a different available space depending on what information is preset to be displayed on that template. These light blue areas are available for things like company logos, affiliated group logos, or any other information you want to include. Some examples of these are in the top. You might want to have your address, phone number, email address, website that is across the majority of the documents. For your sales documents, you may also wish to include a reservation of title. Down the bottom in this particular document, you may want to have your BSB and account number for direct payment details. The color schemes available are also customizable to your corporate colors. When talking with the ACR training team, they can help work with you to choose an appropriate template, as well as helping you get it all set up. Once you have your documents created and loaded into ACR, then it's time to configure the system to start using them. The first thing we're going to do to start using the eDocs or a new document type that you've not used before is to set it up in a menu item called eDoc Document Types. Within ACR, eDoc document types can be found under Toolbox, Configuration, eDoc Document Types. The first thing to do with this screen is to select which document type you want to configure. Each document type needs to be set up before it can be used. And this is done by selecting the document type from the drop-down. And this will list all of the documents that are available to you for use. If a document type you're after is not displayed in this drop-down and you wish to use it, you'll need to contact the ACR training team to discuss getting it set up. So for this example, we're going to select Wholesale Invoice Tax Invoice. So what we need to do here, and as you can see, this is a preset, this is already set up, but what we would need to do is to first set up the email reply address. Now what this is the email address that the document will appear to have come from when you send it, and it's the address that gets used if the recipient hits reply. This is the address that it will reply to. Now, this screen gets set up independently for each document type, and as you can see, even within one particular template, the wholesale invoice template, there are different types that are document types that are used depending on exactly what's happening. So a tax invoice will be used for standard invoicing. If you're doing an export invoice, the export invoice type will be used. Adjustment notes, a damaged goods credit, a short supplied invoice, a back order invoice, or a quote invoice. Each have their own type. So once we've got the email address set up, the next thing is the name. Now this is just the name that gets associated with that email address. When you send an email, if a name is associated with it, that name will display rather than the full email address. So it's quite common to just have that be something like the company name. So after that, we need to set up the email attachment, the subject, and the message. These are the details that make up the actual body of the email that gets sent to your customers. The actual document will be attached and given the name that is used here in the email attachment, but the body of the email is what we're setting up here. So in these fields, you do have the option of using the merge fields, although you don't have to. Merge fields help with personalizing the email you're sending. And the content of these emails can be as simple or as complicated as you like. If you wanted to, you could have something as simple as invoice.pdf, and the attachment does need to end in PDF. The subject be invoice. And the body could be something as simple as your invoice attached. That would be sufficient to get it started and working. And you could quite easily copy that and paste it into each of the different types here and just leave that as what you wanted. And ACR will be extremely happy with that and will function fine. From here is where you get to actually start personalizing it a bit more to the customer, and you have that opportunity to use the merge fields available to you to customize it. So the merge fields, they work as a placeholder for information that when the document is printed, gets slipped in place of the merge field. So when using these fields, you do need to include the bracket, start and stop, in the information you use. So what we have available is account number, ACCNO, the customer's trading name, the primary contact name for that customer. Now, sorry, when I say this is the account number for the customer or supplier. This is the trading name of the customer or supplier. This is the primary contact name associated with either the customer or supplier, depending on the document being used. The transaction number associated with that document. So for an invoice, it would be the invoice number. For an order, it would be the order number within ACR. Order no is the order number again. So if it's an invoice, it'll be your customer's order number if it's entered, as an example. Date is the date that the document was created, the time the document was created, and if you're utilizing ACR's track and deliver system, you can have it automatically put in the URL for the proof of delivery. So POD URL stands for proof of delivery URL. So adding merge fields will allow the ACR system to substitute information when it's available. So an example of this is where you could start coming in here and customizing it a bit, and this time instead of just putting invoice, you can put invoice transno. So that will mean it will actually have invoice and then the invoice number.pdf. Now, another suggestion in the subject, people like to be able to see the invoice number on the subject, because some people only view the subjects and not a preview of the information itself. So it can help your customers sometimes to include that transaction number in the document itself that you, in the subject of the email that you send them. Now, in the email message itself, what we can do is we can do something like your invoice, then the invoice number, dated, date is attached. Now that's a simple use of the merge fields, but what it does allow you to do is give information to the customer so they don't have to open the document to get that information. From the email, they're able to see what the invoice number is and when it was created. So with that, what happens though is that if a merge field does not have information to use, it's left blank. Basically, it's just a space left instead, a space character instead of the information. So you'd end up having your invoice space 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 dated, and that can look a little bit strange. So what you can do is you can actually place square brackets around text to actually encompass, or to tell. So if you place square brackets around text that contains a merge field, if the merge field is not needed, the entire text within the square bracket does not get included. If the merge field is needed, the text will be included. So an example of that would be if you did something like this. So square bracket, hello, contact name, comma, we're going to move down and we'll close it. So that way, and we'll move that back up. That way, if the contact name is not there, that entire first line will not be displayed at all. It will start on that second line and display it, and you won't have a gap at the beginning. Now, the last thing that we might add is just your and we'll consider that done. Now, if you're working through these and working on them, making changes, if you want to go and make a change, as soon as you've made the change, it's saved. This automatically saves any changes that you make. So if you want to then move on and work on the next one, you just simply select the next document type to work on. You don't have to click save or OK or anything like that. Obviously, once you're finished, clicking OK will save your work and close it out. For selected document types, it's possible to set up more than one image to be used. Examples of these are your wholesale tax invoice and your debtor statements. These additional documents work on a filter basis. So the way they work is that the system will, the initial one that you set up, that is your base one, works as a catch-all. Anything that doesn't meet the filtered requirements gets to use the base document that does not have any filters on it. You then go through and you add documents that have filters. So to set up more than one image, first thing to do is to contact ACR to have the image created and loaded. Once this image is set up, you then activate it and set a filter to meet. So in this, basically you set it up, you have a scroll bar on the side here, you click on new if you've got it, and you can then set it up. So the filters allow you to have up to 3 filters set on each, these do work as AND filters. So you need to meet all the conditions listed here for it to work for that one. So if you've got 3 different groups, you may set up 3 different filters, one for each of the groups to say it meets. So in this case, if it met this particular group, group 20, then it would use this particular document type. If it was any other customer promo group, it would use this one. If you wanted to set up another one that used a different one, we could set up a new one and select which one we wanted, set a new filter, and it would continue on. So what we have here, one quick way to set these up, as I'd mentioned, is simply copying and pasting. So all I'm using here is the Control-C and Control-V keyboard shortcuts. So highlight it, Control-C, and this allows you to quickly, once you've written it once, copy and paste it into the other documents that you require. Now, with these, the filters do work on an order of precedence. So what that means is that if you leave the basic and standard setup, the more specific a filter, the higher priority it gets. Now, to be able to actually check what your precedence is, you can actually click the precedence button. And this will explain to you the order in which it will work. So you basically look at filter 1 to determine what one you have. Then if you have a filter 2 and a filter 3, you can compare multiple. So if you have one that has a ship to and then another that has a charge to, the ship to will always take precedence over the charge to. Now the last thing we can do is the review, where we can actually see what we have set up and shows you from the highest precedence to the lowest in order. So the more we have here, the longer the list will be, but it will show us the order of precedence that they will actually get utilized in. So we can see that this one here takes precedence over this one because it has a filter set. No filter is effectively the lowest order of precedence. Now, with the order of precedence, there is a configuration under Open eDoc, or under eDoc configuration. The order of precedence can be configured to suit your needs in here. It's recommended to leave it as the default unless you have a specific reason to change it. So unless you specifically need to have one of these take precedence over the other. When ACR adds a new filter, which it does periodically, ACR will generally slot it in at the appropriate level that it needs to be added. If, however, you have changed the order of precedence at all, ACR will slot any new filters in at the bottom lowest level of precedence. So the other configuration that we can see here is to do with the default for the eDoc override tick box on the printer selection screen. This is a tick box that we'll talk more about in a moment. So the default that you can have is determined by these options, and the options you've got are set as last. This is the default setting. This just means whatever you used last time is what will display next time. So the last time you printed a wholesale invoice using the print selected button in invoice maintenance, if you had the eDoc override tick box selected, it will remember it for next time. If you had it unselected, it will remember it for the next time. Set on means that it will, by default, be turned on, but allow you to turn it off if you choose not to send it. Locked on will, by default, lock it on and prevent you turning it off. So you will always have to send the document via eDocs if there's an email address set. The last one is set off. That means it's turned off by default, but will allow you to turn it back on if you require. Okay, so now we've gone through, we've spoken about creating the image, We've spoken about setting them up with the email details under eDocs document types, and we've spoken about the basic configurations for the output defaults and the order of precedence. The next thing we've got is we're going to have a look at the actual customer and setting up customers and suppliers. So we'll look at customer first. So with the customer, there's basically 3 different areas that will have an effect on the eDocs system within ACR. The first one is under the B2B button, under eDocuments. This is where we set up the address to send an eDocument to. Each customer is set up with their own list of documents to use, and each document has its own address. So each document type has its own address to be set up. Each document type is set up individually so that you can have a unique address attached to it. This is because, in our experience, some companies prefer to have different people getting copies of invoices than getting copies of statements. So to add an extra document type, all you do is simply click the Add button, select the type from the drop-down, choose the email address, enter in your destination email. So this is the email address that the document will get sent to, and enter in the contact name. Now, you are able to add multiple email addresses in by simply putting a comma and then typing the next one. And the same as you can put in a corresponding contact name by doing the same thing. Now, I'd recommend sticking to about 2 to 3 email addresses, depending on how long they are. We tend to find that works the best and most consistent. That's it. That's as hard as it is to set a customer up ready to start using their eDocs. As you can see here, we've gone through and just simply created the different types we needed on this particular customer. But it would have taken maybe 2 minutes to have done that from scratch. So once we do that, we click OK, we save, and that saved it. The second bit of information, the second section in customer maintenance that does have an effect is statement type. Now, this will allow you to see what style of statement you're configured for. If you have the bulk billing statement, you'll see bulk billing. If you have an open item brought forward style, you'll see open item and brought forward. These two do have different eDoc document types, and it depends on what your customer base is looking for, depends on which one you'll have configured, or you may possibly have both. So if you have none set up as statement type, when you try to actually run your statements, no physical statement will get generated. It won't get emailed, it won't get printed. You do need to select a statement type for this customer to be able to get a statement. However, if you want the customer to never receive a statement, you can set it to none. All right, so that's 2 of the 3 areas covered. The third area we have is the HO copy and delivery copy sections. These tick boxes are very important as they'll determine how many copies of an invoice are created. The system will look at if the eDocs override tick box has been selected when printing, and if it has, it'll then determine if it needs to send a copy via email and or print copies, depending on how you have this set up and what you have under your B2B eDocuments button. So if you have neither the HO copy or the delivery copy tick boxes selected, you will be able to generate a single normal copy, and it will either print out or email, depending on if you have the eDocs override tick box selected and a corresponding email address configured. So if you have an email address, if you untick the eDocs override tick box when you're printing, you will physically print out the document to whatever output method has been selected. If you have the eDocs override tick box selected, it will then check the customer record under B2B eDocuments. It'll check that document type, and if that document type itself has been set up here with an email address, it will then email a document to them. So if neither is selected, a normal copy will either be printed or emailed, depending on how you have it set up. If only H, so that's if neither are selected. If neither are selected, you'll get just a normal copy. If HO copy is selected only, then you will get a head office copy either printed or emailed, and a normal copy printed out. So the head office copy, you will get 2 copies of the invoice. The head office copy, if you tell it to use eDocs and you've configured for it, it will email that copy to the customer. If you've not told it to use eDocs or you've not set an email address up, that copy will print out. The normal copy will always print out. If you have head office copy and delivery copy ticked, then you're going to have a head office copy either print or email, depending on what you tell it to do, and you'll have a delivery copy printout. Now, the delivery copy generally looks like a normal invoice. However, you can select whether that's a priced or unpriced document, as you may wish to only send unpriced delivery dockets with shipments. Now, how these 2 tick boxes work does change slightly if you have a different charge to account set up on your customer. So if you have a different account number in the charge to than you have in the account number, then the way the system will do it is it will have a look here to see what tick boxes are selected to determine which copies are generated. It will then have a look at the charge to accounts B2B eDocuments button to determine what email address to send it to. So if the head office copy tick box is selected, it will then, on the ship to customer, it will then look at the bill to determine what email address to send the head office copy to. If neither are ticked and only a normal copy is being generated, it will have a look at the charge to accounts eDocuments button to determine which email address to send it to. That wraps up looking at customers and how to set them up for the eDocs. It's not a very difficult situation, and it's something that once you have the initial set created and set up, it's very easy to maintain as a customer's come on board, or as a customer provides you details to simply go through and add them onto there. What we're going to have a look at now is supplier maintenance, and we're going to have a quick look at suppliers. They're much simpler. They only have one button under B2B eDocuments. This works the same as it does for the customers. However, you have a different set of documents displaying, as the customers will only see the documents relevant to customers. Suppliers only see the documents relevant to suppliers. Again, you come in here, you select the document type, email, output method, destination, and contact name. Now, output method, there are 2 output methods available, fax or email. Fax is becoming a very much less common option to use. However, if you do select fax, I'll select one that'll actually work for me, remittance. If you do select fax, you then simply just type in the phone number that you want to fax it to, instead of putting an email address in. But the majority of people are now using email, and that's the common one to use now. And that's setting up a supplier. It's as simple as that. Once you have once you've set up the document type in here, they're ready to start receiving them. Now, it is possible to set those up in bulk for either a customer or a supplier. using the export import utility. And if you'd like assistance with doing that, please contact the ACR training team, who'd be more than happy to help you with setting up and running the export import utility. So we've now had a look at creating or setting up the documents both outside of ACR, where you get your physical template created, inside ACR, where you set up your eDoc document types. What we're now going to have a quick look at is how they actually get printed. So documents still get printed in the same way you've always been used to printing them within ACR. The difference comes once the printer selection screen is shown. So to send a document by eDocs, the eDocs output override tick box, which we've already mentioned, must be selected. This can be accessed generally from the printer selection screen. So when we're in invoicing, we have an invoice. We complete it. When we get to this part, now, you will only be able to use the eDocs output for document types that have a printer have an email template selectable. So as a picking slip, if we try to go to change printer, we're not going to be able to select eDoc outputs because there's not a configurable eDoc for that. If we select it as print an invoice and go to change printer, we can now select that we want to go to screen for any documents that need to be displayed or printed, but we want the eDoc override to go out here. So we'll click on OK to that. We can see up here that it's selected, and we'll click on OK. And what will now happen, it'll go through asking us what documents we want to create, and it'll tell us that one email has been logged. And gives us our invoice number as normal. And what we'll see is the document that, so our delivery copy, delivery docket, has printed out. In this case, it's displayed on screen. We can see that it's filled out the customer details, customer account, delivery comments, invoice pertinent details, added our invoice comments and our invoice details on here. We have a non-priced version set up here. Now, to be able to actually see what's come on email, we can switch over to our email program now. And we can see that we've received an email for document 105994. If we come here, 105994. So we can open this up and we can see here that it's populated our invoice number in the document name. It's put our contact details, our invoice number, the date the document was created, and given us our proof of delivery URL. So these are all the bits of information that we added in when we were in eDocs document types. Under wholesale tax invoice, we asked it to put transaction numbers, a contact name if it's available, the date, and the proof of delivery URL. And then your recipient can simply open this, print it out, do what they require with it. Now, we can also print documents from other areas for wholesaling. We can go to the dashboard, invoice maintenance. We can look up a customer. Now under here, again, as I said, with unprinted picking slips, if we go to print it, we're not going to have that option. However, if we go to print an invoice, we will have that option. Because it's now an actual invoice, we can tell it we want to send it via eDocs. And we'll see that this will go out via eDocs as well. So this time we've got document 105527, one email's logged, 105527. Further down, if you decide you want to reprint a document, reprint selected, we can also send that out via eDocs. So just happen to grab that same one. What we'll find in here is that we now have 2 copies of it. So there's our original one, and there's our second one we've just sent. Really nice and easy system to use. And it's not only for our wholesaling. In point of sale, you can do the same thing. Point of sale. With point of sale, it'll allow you to do this with an account sale. You can't send an eDoc for a cash sale because there's nothing configured to tell it what email address. However, you can use the email option for an output. So when we come in here, we select the other printer. So in this case, we're going to select the include eDocs output. Now, as I was saying, if you'd completed this as a cash sale, we'll look at that. So, as I said, include eDocs output defaults here, and we can now send our point of sale invoice. We get an unpriced delivery copy here to send with the shipment if we need it. Our one email's logged. And this time you'll notice that we're actually seeing it come from a different name, training instead of accounts, as well as we've got a slightly different, so our subject is different here, and the details we've asked to send are different as well. But we still create we've still just created a single document. As I explained in this one, the light blue areas are where you've got available to you, depending on what options you have selected, and your training team can help you with that. Now, if you were to do a cash sale, you can still use these eDoc documents. However, instead of being able to actually email them out, what you're able to do is instead of being able to use the output override, because a cash sale has no configured email address to send to, you can either print it to screen, which will give you a copy on screen that will look similar to this, but with prices, or you can choose email, which will allow you to type in an email address to send it to. It'll pre-populate the same information and send. But type in an email address, pre-populate the correct information. So you can select email. When you do, it'll pre-populate the correct information, allow you to populate the email address you wish to send it to, and click send. One email logged, and what we'll see when we come over here, when we refresh, we now have that document in here ready to go for a cash sale. So you can still utilize the eDoc system for cash sales. And lastly, similar to the invoicing system in point of sale maintenance, you're able to again use your reprint selected to choose to send these documents to via the eDoc system as well. So we can select one and we can choose the eDoc override. And when we do, one email logged. And again, the document comes in here. The last point I'd like to make is if you encounter a message like the one displayed on screen saying, please define email reply address before using eDocs output default for this document type, you need to go back to the eDoc document types menu item and set up the email details for the specific document type that you're trying to use. Normally when you're using a different version, so say it's the first time you've used a point of sale quote instead of a point of sale tax invoice, you may encounter this message because you may not have set the quotes up correctly yet. So it's just worth understanding what this message means and what it's telling you. So simply go back to the eDoc document types, have a look at the type, whether it's a point of sale, a wholesale tax invoice or such that you're using, look through them, find the one that isn't configured and set it up. Now for a couple of handy hints. The ACR training team can help you with picking which templates to use when you're first setting up your eDocuments, or if for some reason you decide you want to look at changing what documents you're using, the ACR training team can also assist you there with giving you information about what's available and what information you can put on your document. Secondly, after you've set up the reply email details, you are able to change them whenever you need. This can be used as a communication tool to your customers and your suppliers because this is an email that's getting sent out on a regular basis. So you are able to, say in the lead up to the Christmas period, you're able to put your Christmas operating hours in that email. You may just choose to do this mid-November. So then for approximately a month, your customers are receiving emails that have your trading hour details in it every time they buy from you. If you have a change of information like a new bank accounts or telephone numbers, email addresses, new website, something you want to sort of promote with it, you can put that information in the email as well if you wish. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you staying with us through this session to see how to set up and use eDocs within the ACR system. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact the ACR training team. They're here to help you get the most out of your existing system, so please utilize that resource. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar.